I would love to have you just sign up and let me know that you're here. So yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and get started because time is valuable and precious and all of that. So there's obviously a picture there. I only have like 5 pictures, so it's not like there's a lot of other action. There's just me speaking. But let me just open us up with a prayer, and then I will get started. But Wayne, you can't. Where are you in the back? Can you see me? Are you starting the recording now? Okay. So I just asked him. I didn't want to live stream this, but I know there were a couple guys that couldn't make it, so I wanted to put this on the screen. I mean, a video, but I want to make sure that it's editable if necessary. But God, I'm grateful to be here in this place tonight with these men. I'm really thankful to be on a journey with this congregation. I'm thankful for the ways that you put these people in my life, and I'm thankful for the families that we represent. I'm thankful for all of our fathers, and I'm thankful for all the children that are represented here by the men in this room. And God, I'm going to ask for your blessing upon tonight. I know that you put words in my heart that you want to come out, and I'm not exactly sure what they're going to sound like when they come out, but I trust that you will work in between my speaking and the hearing in such a way that something good might happen in each one of our lives. And that would be my prayer, and I ask that on behalf of all of us in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, well, it's a little intimidating. For someone that speaks a whole lot, a little intimidating to be here with all you guys. I really respect you all and appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to be here. So I'm just going to get right into what I had to say, what I wanted to share. This has been on my heart for a long time, to share something like this or some pieces of this. And I've struggled with what to call this. It's not a lecture. It's not a sermon, but there may be little elements of that somewhere kind of at the end. If anything, it's kind of more of a testimony. And then I thought about, well, it's about my father. And the longest part, really, of tonight, I don't know how long it's going to take. It'll be less than an hour, what I have to say, I think. I wanted to talk about my dad. And I'm a son. And I am a son of a father. And I wanted to talk about him. And that's the longest part of what I have to share. And then I thought about, well, this past year I had my cancer issue. And that kind of made me think about a couple of things that were related. And then a couple of years ago, I did a survey here at the church, and I learned something about our church members that has to do with fathers. And so I thought, well, I need to share this with some people sometime. That was a couple years ago. And I thought, well, what I wanted to say is there's nothing sacred about these words tonight that women can't hear or wives can't hear. But I really wanted to speak to men in a way that, you can't say some of these things in a mixed audience and get the same kind of effect. Or I'm going to talk about the importance of men, and I don't necessarily want to do that in a mixed audience. So then I was thinking, well, I'm going to invite. The best way to do this is to just invite people to something at the church. I said, well, I'm going to invite the men who are raising children at home. And I was thinking of like Travis and Lewis that have children at home. And then I thought, well, there's guys that are older, their children are older in high school or college, and this kind of pertains to them too, so I'll invite them. And then I thought, well, then there's some guys that are a lot older than that, but maybe their father's living, and this is about sons and fathers, so let me invite them. And then I said, well, some people don't have children, but they're a father figure, and everybody's a son of somebody's father. So I just ended up saying, look, I'm just going to invite all the men. And what I have to say tonight is kind of like my story and my experiences. I don't mean to suggest that my experiences are your experiences. I like what they say in recovery groups and 12-step programs. When someone speaks, you say, take what you want and leave the rest. Like, if 1% of what I say speaks to you, just hang on to that and throw away the 99%. So I just wanted to share with you kind of these things and take it from there. I'll have one thing to say about the future at the very end. But so without further ado, let me just begin here. You can put that picture back up, the first one, if you want, Wayne. So that's my dad. He was in the slideshow yesterday, and the very quick basics are, and probably many of you know this. My dad died when I was 29, and he was 62, which, you know, as the years go by, that's an age that's closer and closer to my own age. At the time, I thought it was a long way away, you know. But you probably knew that. He died suddenly of a heart attack. So he was mowing the lawn one May afternoon. He died May 14th, the same day that Frank Sinatra died, if you remember that, in 1998. So he went outside and mowed the lawn, came back in, took a shower, and sat down on the futon. And his dad, my grandfather, had moved into the house with my mom and dad, and they were sitting there together in the room, and he just closed his eyes and took a lean to the left and laid down, and that was it. And the reason why I say that is we talked about this yesterday, and I didn't plan this for All Saints Sunday, but when somebody, and you know this, when somebody dies suddenly like that, there's no preparation. Right? You're cruising along in your life, and then all of a sudden, everything changes. And so all of the grief has to happen after the fact. Like there's no death that's better or worse than any other, but each is unique. But when someone has a long runway, there's a chance to process that beforehand. You know, when it's quick and sudden, and all of it's after the fact. So when I think about grief in my relationship to my dad, I think a lot of us, we look at the past through rose-colored glasses, right? We only pick out the good. When you think back to your childhood, you maybe only remember the good things, or high school football was the only I remember the good things about it. And that was the case with my dad. I either hung on to the good memories of him, or, and this was maybe unique to me, I don't know, I took the things that were difficult, that I probably didn't like about him, or at the time, and I put a positive spin on them. And I think that's a coping mechanism to just kind of survive grief and to keep going, is to only think back in positive terms over things. Well, as you know, then I went on with my life. So and I also felt guilty. I mean, I still do. I still deal with this, like thinking back and saying anything critical of someone who's no longer with us. There's a certain amount of guilt that you feel. And then as a father or as a son, you know, who wants to honor your mother and father. So I know that those kinds of things have been with me for the last, 27 years. But for 20 plus years, I pretty much did what my dad had done in his life with us. I buried my feelings, and I got busy with work, and I'm still a pretty hard worker, and I never looked back emotionally. And the only time I looked back was to pick out those good memories or those ones that were kind of positively spun. But so then 20 years later, as some of you know, if you were here in 2023, I went away for 3 months on sabbatical. It was the best thing I ever did. I'm still so thankful to you for giving me that time off. I worked on my mental health. I worked on my emotional health. I saw a therapist. I still see a therapist. And I started to look at my life in a newer way, looked at my children's life in a new way, my relationship with them, and that ultimately is leading me to where I am here. So with that as an introduction, I'll go back to the beginning. Well, I think there's a nice little picture here. Yeah, so this was fathers and sons and fathers. So for some reason, my mom thought it was important to sew matching shirts. Like, okay, right? And then that's Thomas and me on the right. But if you go back, then you go to the next picture, if you don't mind there. Yeah, so this is my family. So I was the only son, middle child of a family of 5, and 2 sisters, one older, one younger. And I would say that, and you can pull that off kind of anytime you want, but in many ways, my dad was a great dad. Just an incredible, fantastic dad, and especially in all the physical things, in the way that physical things are important. So his love language was deeds of service. So acts of service, doing things, physical things, showing up. So this was in the 70s when I was growing up as a young child. Life was different then, as you know, than it is now. But he was home every night for dinner. So we always ate dinner as a family, always prayed before dinner. He went to church every Sunday, went to church as a family. He sung in the choir. He was the financial secretary, the treasurer of the congregation. This was back in the day when he would bring all the offerings home and count them at home and then take them to the bank on Monday morning. Like, that'll happen, right? And you can show the next picture. He was the first coach I had. And I would say would be the best coach I ever had. So I started playing. We weren't allowed to play baseball until grade 3. So from 3rd grade to 9th grade, he was a baseball coach. This is City Champs, 1982. And yeah, right, there you go. But, and he played football himself in high school, but he was not a baseball guy, like in terms of skills. He didn't know the game, but he knew organization. He was a mathematician. He got his advanced degree in biostatistics, like health-related statistics. So he did cancer research back in the 1960s and things like this. So he was organized, and he knew exactly how to put a team together, and he had enough sensibility so you could get each coach could write something for the local paper, and those words would be in the paper the next day on the youth baseball page, and he made sure every player's name was in the paper once a year. Like, even if all you did was, show up and get to your position at third base, he'd make sure that was a highlight, So in all of these ways was a great dad. He attended every concert that I remember. I was in jazz band, marching band, orchestra, symphonic band. He went to all of these things. I also played football. That's the junior football. There were 2 football teams. There were 3 football teams for youth football in my town. One was the Junior Rams, and they had the cool Ram helmets. And then the other one was the Junior Wolverines, which, okay, enough said, right? Everybody wanted that. I got on the Junior Packers. Yeah, that was my team. But my dad showed up to football practice. He would pick me up, and he would always come for the last 10 minutes and stand on the hill and watch the last 10 minutes of practice. And everybody on the team knew that when my dad showed up, we're about done. And occasionally he got off work early and came, an hour early, and that pissed everybody off, of course. But I would say, I mean, you see what he looked like, right? I mean, he was sturdy. He was 5'9", 250. I mean, he battled weight his whole life. But I felt safe. I would say, looking back on my childhood, I felt safe. I felt that he was in control. He was the patriarch of the family. There was no doubt about that. He was a provider, and I felt like we were in good hands as a family with him. So, in another way, and in other ways, he was a really, really hard man. He was tough. I would never say that I was abused, but I was spanked. And I would not say that I was spanked regularly, but it happened. And I remember the biggest thing is I remember being afraid of him. And again, you've seen his stature. I mean, he was an imposing. In my life, he was an imposing figure. And I remember using the words, I was afraid of him. He was extremely strict. I mean, extremely strict. Rules about absolutely everything. He was a perfectionist, and he was critical. Perfectionists are generally critical. So he's very critical. He was very, 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 very hard to please. And I remember being scared when he was angry. Anger was the only emotion the main emotion that I remember him showing. And that held true for a long time. Ironically, when we would get Christmas cards, back in the day, families would exchange Christmas cards before the photos came along, and now it's all digital. But remember, you used to send family Christmas letters, and we would read those at the dinner table. And my dad, the patriarch, would read all the letters. And he would occasionally tear up or when he was reading a letter. And I remember that it took us off guard. And I feel like my sisters and I, we really liked that about him. But that was never shown. It's just anger would be the one that was the most. And I would say that in general, I didn't disobey. I mean, I broke rules as a child. My rebelliousness came later after I left home. But I didn't generally disobey because it was scary. And there were consequences for everything. The other thing about him, he was stingy with praise. I remember, and this continued all the way into my high school and late adolescent years, but I always wanted to look busy when he came home. Wherever he was, whenever he walked in the door, I wanted to look busy, like I was productive, like I was a good member of the family. I was a good man or a good boy if I was doing something. Like he would be proud of me if I was active and productive. And honestly, my workaholism today, I still have this compulsion toward being productive. That it's not a successful day unless I've done something productive. But his love was conditional. Or I felt this way, that love was conditional based on what you do. If you do something, then if you do something well, then you'll get praise. If you don't do something well, you won't be loved. And I remember him saying so many times, he would say, I shouldn't have to thank you for a job you should already be doing. And that was one of those things that I remember thinking, wow, after he died, I thought, that's a really cool thing. I was raised by a tough dad. But then also I thought, well, how bleeping hard is it to say thank you? I mean, it's not that hard at all, right? If you love somebody, then but this presents a conundrum. Like, he's a perfectionist and he's critical, and you have to be perfect or you'll be criticized. And when you are perfect and you do what you're supposed to do, you're not going to be thanked because you should be doing it anyway. So it's this kind of vicious cycle like that. And I remember him speaking poorly about people that he thought were soft. And a soft person was someone who needed a pat on the back. Like, he called it strokes. Like, you needed a stroke. If you needed stroking like a pet, then you were soft. And he would speak dismissively about that. Now, I say all of that for this reason. I think that I was more of a sensitive child growing up, and I still am. Probably, I wanted more nurture and I wanted more affection from him. I needed him to be another kind of father. In addition to the kind of father that he was, I needed him to be an additional kind of father that he wasn't able to be. And now I say that, and I say, I know he tried. He tried to. I know he was proud of me at the head level, but it never really connected down here at the heart level. He wrote me a letter on my 18th birthday, and I have found a copy of this letter recently. And it starts out by saying, now, Michael, you're going to be 18, and remember not to drink because alcohol is against the law. I mean, that's like any 18-year-old's listening to that. But he said in that letter, he said, I know that you're afraid of me. I know that you've been afraid of me. And I think that letter was an attempt he was trying to bring up some good memories that we had together. So I know that he tried. I know it. There's another picture there. You can show this. I think this is us, yeah. So this is me. I came home from Germany in 1994. And so I was now about 25. And I was living at home before I went away to graduate school. And he said, Michael, let's go out for a drink. Let's go out for now you're 18, right? And now you can drink. So let's go drink. Let's go. And he never drank. I'll say more about that in a minute. So I knew this was something, right? And so we go to Fraser's Pub. We drive down there, and nothing's any different. It's kind of just dad and son, in the car. And then we get to the bar and sit down at a table, order a pitcher, and pours the beer, and okay, now we talk, right? It's just really stilted and unnatural. And so I say that for those reasons. Like, he was trying to connect in a deeper way. And by that point, there's so many patterns that are set in motion that it's really tough to just all of a sudden change. So I say all of that, and I say this: I don't blame him, that's the thing that I wrestle with as I've kind of thought about my past. I don't blame him at all, and I see that he was just doing the best he could. He was trying. He was trying. He just didn't know another way of being a father, and I really don't blame him because of all the stuff that I'm about to tell you about him that I didn't know because of him, but just because of what we pieced together over the years. So, for example, my dad's dad, and you can put that next picture on there. So that's my Grandpa Mike. Obviously he's on the left, but Grandpa Mike was an alcoholic and a heavy drinker. Now, he quit drinking the year before I was born. So I only knew a sober grandfather, which is a fun grandfather, right? The fun guy, the happy guy. But I think my grandfather beat his wife. And I think my dad had watched that. He never said it. He never talked about this kind of stuff. But he gave out like cryptic comments along the way. I know that his mother, my grandmother, died when my dad was in his 20s. So the same age that my dad died when I was in my 20s. And I know that he loved his mom. He gave enough information that he really loved his mom, and she died. He never talked about that. Never talked about his feelings about that. Here's the other thing. I know that he was an only child, my dad. That's what we thought. Then we came to find out later, and he was living. I mean, he never denied this, just never talked about it. He had 2 siblings that died in childbirth. I thought they were stillborn. Well, I found death records that my dad was 6 and 8 when the children died. So he's well old enough to have these memories of siblings, and he never, ever talked about that. My grandfather that you saw, Grandpa Mike, he was a Lithuanian Catholic, so no birth control, right? He was one of 12 children, my grandpa, and I literally have hundreds, if not 1,000 cousins on that side of the family, and I know none of them. Like my dad just shut us off completely from that side of the family. Now, again, I say all of this. I don't blame him for that. That was his choice. It's totally his prerogative to do whatever he wanted to do. But what I'm saying is he never talked about his feelings. Never talked about his feelings about any of that for whatever reason. But I would just close this section by saying kind of that I think that's the father that I wanted, the father that I needed, someone that was just more human and not just someone that established rules and carried out organizational things. Well, then I said he died suddenly of a heart attack. But the significance of that is I think that's just at the age when men start to connect with their dads. I don't know if I envy anything of you guys, it's that a lot of you have that opportunity. And I wonder what that's like. I admire you. I don't envy you, really. I guess I do a little bit. But I admire you. I admire that you have a chance to be men together. And I think it happened somewhere maybe in the 20s. And that was right at the time when he died. And then flipping forward, I started having children of my own. And of course, I was the kind of father that came naturally to me, which was in part modeling the stuff that I saw raised as a as I saw as a child. And I saw meaning I was critical of my kids and a perfectionist. And if you brought them an 85, I'd say, why isn't this a 90? Don't ever say this to her because she will not like it. But I was the one that practiced music with the kids. And one time, I would get on the kids, be better, be better, be better. And Bella was crying. She was crying because she was upset that her dad was yelling at her. And I barely hugged her. That's what you do. Your kids are supposed to cry when you yell at them, right? And I was just kind of carrying on the same things. I was critical, and I had set rules for the sake of rules without really talking about the motivation behind them, just because I said so, these kinds of things. But mostly, I saw my kids starting to act toward me the way I acted toward my dad. Like they were too focused on my mood. Dad, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you doing okay, Dad? I'm like, that's not what a child is supposed to think. They don't need to take care of me, right? My emotions. And I saw them scared, or they told me as they were getting older, Dad, when you yell, it's scary when you raise your voice. So it just got me taking a different look at myself. And that's ultimately what led me to therapy, and to examine my life in a new way. And to look at the level of addiction in my family. So my grandfather was an alcoholic. My dad never drank, except that, very rarely, like when he wanted to have a talk with me at Fraser's Pub. But he ran the family like he was like you've heard of a dry alcoholic, someone who exhibits the characteristics of an alcoholic. Like we always walked around eggshells around him, and we always were accommodating him to keep him from being angry. That's the way our family functioned. I have a sister who had an eating disorder, a nephew who has a narcotics addiction. I have a niece with another eating disorder. So I know that and I have my own compulsions about exercise and work, and I can't have one thing. I have to have a lot of things, whatever that one thing is, So what I guess I would say about this section to wrap this up about my dad is what I probably miss most is just having more time. Like I say, we were just starting to connect as men, as fathers and sons can only do in adulthood. And I would have wanted to say to him now, and maybe this whole thing is a way for me to have closure with him, just talking this through. But I would want to tell my dad, as I was a man, as I was an adult, I would want to say, Dad, it's okay. It's okay to talk about these things of your past that may have been painful. So tell me about what you felt about your mom. How did it feel when she died? And tell me about her, and tell me what it was like to live with your dad, my grandfather, and anything else. Not rules, not advice. I have enough rules and advice from you. You've got that down well. I've got the organizational, I've got the words of wisdom. What I needed more was just more of him and who he was as a person. So that's that first section. And then, like I say, that's the longest thing that I wanted to really share. The second thing was my health, and I certainly don't want this to be preachy, but I just wanted to share with you. So I was diagnosed with cancer in March, and that I didn't go to a doctor for many years, and I came up with all kinds of excuses not to go to a doctor, like there's no doctors in Decatur, or whatever, But in 2022, I finally made a commitment to start seeing a doctor regularly. And by 2024, I had a PSA test. And a PSA test is not a finger test. That's called a digital rectal test. Nobody likes those, right? But the PSA test is just a blood test, and they just draw blood and they check for this antigen that's in your prostate that your prostate produces. That doesn't mean you have cancer, but it could mean that you have cancer. So that number needs to be a certain thing, or they get worried. And mine was going up fast, and so they kept doing more of these tests last winter about this time. And then in March, then they do an MRI, then a biopsy, and then you have it. Then they know for sure. Well, I'm happy to talk to anybody about this more in particular if you want to, but I don't plan to today. The only thing that I wanted to say is this came on a wellness visit. And chances are, statistics show that the women in our lives, our wives and mothers and daughters, they probably go to the doctor a lot more often than we go to the doctor. And we come up with a lot of reasons for not doing it, but this was found on a wellness visit. And for me, I just wanted it out of me. I just wanted it out. And you have the choice to do what you want to do, with your health. But to me, the knowing was better than the not knowing. But that, like I say, I'm not preaching. But the other thing I would say about this is men tend not to talk about health with other men. Not like women do. I think women talk to other women about their health much more than men talk to other men. But ironically, when I was getting ready to go into my surgery, it was 5 or 6 men that gave me the most encouragement. 5 or 6 men that had gone through the surgery themselves, because I was nervous about a catheter. I was nervous about what if I'm incontinent when I'm done with this procedure and erectile stuff. And so you can't talk about this without being vulnerable. And so these men, not as a group, not like sabotage or, like that, but just one-on-one, they said, hey, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. That's what I needed. That helped me more than anything else, just being vulnerable about that. The last thing I want to say is this, and this is the thing that I'm maybe the most encouraged by. So a couple years ago at the church, I did this, occasionally I'll do a survey. I'll just throw something out there and I'll say, hey, please take time and answer this survey. And then we use that information to try to do some church planning. So I can't even remember now what the survey was. It was on prayer or faith or something. Those are 2 pretty good guesses, I would guess. But it was one of the questions was, when was a time in your life when you doubted your faith the most? Okay, some general question like that. When did you struggle with your faith the most? And here was the most enlightening thing to me. There were 26 people that responded, 6 of them, so 23%, almost 25%, almost 1 in 4. 23% of the people said they were most distressed in their spiritual life when it was their father's death or near death. Not the mother's death, not the mother's near death, but their father. The father's near death. And so I just want to make these concluding comments and say that we don't know how long we have on this earth. My dad thought he had more than 62 years. I'm banking on 57, but I don't know. But in that time that we have as men, what kind of relationship do you want to have with your children? What kind of relationship do you want to have with your dad? And what are you willing to do to change, to help make that happen? So many times we say, well, I want a better relationship, but I want you to do the work. Well, you can't control them. I wish my children were different. Oh my gosh. I wish they were different in so many ways. I wish Amy were different, but she's not. They're not right now, right? I can't control them, but I can control me and engender the kind of relationship that I want. And the other thing I would say is you matter. I love that statistic, because it says that fathers matter and men in the world matter. So I'd say, this is the preachy part, go to your doctor. Go to the doctor. Just do your wellness checks, because you never know what they might find or, hopefully not find. But it's better to know than not know. And I think what I really want to say is fathers matter not just for what we provide, not just for the physical things we do, not just for the tough love and the advice and the wisdom, not just for the ways that we show up at concerts and football practices and coach baseball teams, because our kids already know that we do that. The people in our life, they already know that we can provide for them. They already know we can take care of them. But I don't know that they know that we love them in the way that they might be looking to be loved. So I'm not saying that we stop doing any of the things we're already doing, but that we consider opening up. So, if you love your children, tell your children. If you're proud of your children, tell them. And if they really frustrate you, then do your best to separate the love from the consequences. And don't blur them. Don't mix them up into one conversation, because they'll associate your love with their behavior. But to separate those things. Men are often taught to be stoic and suppress our feelings, and we think that there's great pride in that. And that's fine. We don't need to work on that. We don't need to practice that anymore. But chances are children want to know that we're human. Why? They want to know that we struggle, that we're nervous, that we made mistakes, that we don't have everything figured out. And why do we say that? Because they're going through those things. And when they're going through those things and they don't think that we can relate to them, they're not going to come to us. They're going to go to their friends. They're going to go somewhere else. So I wanted to be the kind of dad that my children would come to, and I realized that I had to share different parts of myself, share with them not only that I love them and that I'm proud of them regardless of their behavior, but that I'm willing to share my own insecurities and my own. And ironically, or maybe not, my kids always sit there at 9:15. If I stand here and if my voice cracks in a sermon, they'll tell me that's the best part of the day. I mean, we think that we have to have it all put together. So I'm not saying that it doesn't make us less men or less manly to share more of our feelings with our children of vulnerability. I don't think so. I mean, that's like I said. I don't want to get to preaching or anything, but honestly, I would say if your dad is still living and you have a relationship with him, what kind of relationship do you want to have? Talk about the things that you have always wanted to talk about. Say these things now. Say I love you. Say I forgive you. Say please forgive me. And don't let these things be unanswered things when we have All Saints Day and our dad is the one that we're remembering. And I think that's about it. I would say maybe this whole thing is my attempt to have closure with my dad. And if that's the case, then I'm super grateful for your audience and just listening to me, because it has been helpful for me to talk over the past couple of years about this. Because I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, and I didn't get a chance to talk as men about things that fathers and sons are able to do. And if you're a father who has children, I don't doubt that you're doing the best you can. And we support you in doing the very best you can, and that's all you can do. But I would say if you err on the side of anything, err on the side of showing more love than discipline. They probably already know you're a great disciplinarian, but let them know that you're also loving. And then mostly I do believe that it's never too late, and you're never too old to start new behavior, to start new patterns. So that's what I have. I thank you for listening. I have nothing more planned than sharing this with you, and mostly it really stemmed from that statistic that fathers matter, and when it is that God calls you home, it will create such a void in the people in your life. So maximize the kind of father and relationships you want to have now, while you have the time. I will say this, that I think I'm gonna offer a men's group in January or February that's going to talk about these things in more detail. That's not a Bible study, but we'll bring in Scripture. But it's more on talking about our childhood, talking about our dads, talking about what did you love about your dad? How have you continued the good things your dad did? What did you maybe not like as much, and how did that affect you? And some of these things. So again, I'll put in part of the reason for that is I'll send an email invite to everybody when I do that. But again, thank you, and that's all I have for tonight. So. Oh, I think that may be the last picture we have together. And you can tell that he got a lot of mileage out of that shirt. Right? It was a popular choice. Right? All right. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, you bet. Thank you, guys. And I want to make sure everybody has a chance to. Oh, and if you don't know, I don't always like it when the speaker says, "Hey, turn to your neighbor and chat it up for a little bit." I don't like that, but I think I know every one of you in here, and I think that every one of you guys is a really cool guy. I would love for you to know that each other is a really cool guy too. So I'll leave it at that.